This happened to a friend of mine, and even though he told me this story years ago, it's something I've never been able to forget. My friend belongs to the Wikinnexfov Nation, an indigenous tribe from the Pacific Northwest coast. He's an absolute giant, standing about 6'10", with a massive build, a permanently serious expression, and the darkest eyes you've ever seen. Most people find him intimidating the moment they meet him, but he's actually one of the kindest and most gentle people I've ever known. This happened back in 1992, when he was working the graveyard shift at a small gas station in a remote northern town. His shift lasted from 11 at night until 7 in the morning, and after midnight, the station was usually deserted. Most nights he simply sat behind the counter, watching television or flipping through old magazines while waiting for the occasional customer.
The area itself was known for more than just its isolation. The local communities held tightly to their traditions and old beliefs, and stories about spirits, strange creatures, and shape-shifting beings had been passed down for generations. My friend had grown up hearing those stories, and unlike many people, he genuinely believed there was truth behind them. Late one night, a customer pulled into the station, filled up his tank, bought a pack of cigarettes and a soda, paid for everything, and headed back to his car. Nothing about the interaction seemed unusual until my friend happened to glance out the station window toward the tree line. Sitting at the edge of the woods was what looked like an enormous dog. The powerful halogen lights above the pumps cast an eerie yellow glow across the parking lot, while the window blinds stretched long shadows throughout the station, making the entire place feel strangely unsettling. He leaned closer to get a better look, but by the time his eyes focused on it, the animal had completely disappeared. He tried to convince himself it had probably been a wolf. Wolves weren't uncommon in that part of the country, but one thought kept bothering him. Whatever he had just seen was far larger than any wolf he had ever seen before.
Nearly 2 hours passed without another customer. Inside the station, the only sounds were the television quietly playing in the background and the steady hum of the lights. Then a loud crash echoed from behind the building. A few seconds later, another crash followed, and then came the sound of something scraping and banging around outside. Behind the station were several dumpsters, and homeless people occasionally searched through the trash for food, so at first he didn't think much of it. However, the noise continued without stopping, and eventually he decided to check it out. He grabbed a flashlight and a handgun from the office before stepping outside. The night was unnaturally quiet, and even the wind seemed to have disappeared. As he slowly walked around the back of the building, he raised the flashlight and pointed it toward the dumpsters. The moment the beam illuminated the area, his heart nearly stopped. Standing there was the exact same enormous dog he had seen earlier near the road. The only difference was that it wasn't standing on 4 legs anymore. It was standing upright on its hind legs, almost the exact same height as my friend. It clearly wasn't a bear. Its body was unnaturally thin, tall, and gaunt, with proportions that simply didn't look right. When the flashlight caught its eyes, they reflected back like glowing embers burning in the darkness. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then, panic completely took over. The flashlight and the handgun slipped from his hands as he turned and ran as fast as he could back into the gas station. He locked the doors behind him and spent the rest of the night too terrified to even look outside. The strangest part of the entire encounter was that whatever he had seen never followed him. It simply stayed where it was. The next morning, he quit his job without hesitation. And more than 3 decades later, he still insists that what he saw that night wasn't an ordinary animal. According to him, it was a skinwalker, a mysterious shape-shifting being that has long been part of Native American folklore and traditional beliefs. Ever since he told me this story, I found myself wondering the same thing. What did he really see that night? Was it an unusually large wolf, some unknown animal,
Or was it something far stranger that simply can't be explained? Let me know what you think in the comments.
I worked the midnight shift at different gas stations for years. Some were in quiet neighborhoods, while others were in areas where crime was simply part of everyday life. Most nights, I worked completely alone. I was a pretty small guy, and because I knew a lot of people around the area, many of my regular customers looked out for me. If they ever noticed someone acting strange or anything suspicious happening around the station, they'd usually stick around for a while, just to make sure I was okay. But there was one customer who always stood out. Every single morning, just before sunrise, he stopped by on his way to work in the city, almost an hour away. He always bought the exact same pack of cigarettes. He never smiled, never made small talk. He'd walk in, pay, and leave without saying more than a few words. For months, that never changed. Then one morning, I decided to do something simple. Before he even walked through the door, I grabbed his usual cigarettes, scanned them ahead of time, and placed them on the counter. The moment he walked in, all he had to do was pay. For the first time since I'd known him, he smiled. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real. Then he looked at me and asked, "Do you ever get scared working nights? You're a small guy. This isn't exactly the safest job." I smiled and shrugged. Sometimes. But if something feels wrong, I lock the doors and stay inside. The state police station is close by, and the troopers stop here all the time, so I know most of them. He slowly nodded, stayed silent for a few seconds, and then said, "Let me tell you something that happened to me." He explained that back in the late 1980s, after immigrating from Eastern Europe with his wife and young son, money was incredibly tight. The only job he could find was working the overnight shift at a gas station. One night, after working endless hours with almost no sleep, exhaustion finally caught up with him. He accidentally fell asleep behind the counter. When he finally opened his eyes, the phone had been ringing non-stop for hours. His manager was standing over him, shaking him violently. "Are you okay?" Still half asleep, he apologized immediately. "I'm so sorry, I must have fallen asleep." His manager looked at him with a strange expression and replied, "Falling asleep isn't the problem. Go outside." Confused, he walked out the front door and instantly froze. Every single bottle of motor oil was gone. The shelves were completely empty. Cardboard boxes were ripped apart, broken glass covered the ground, and the entire parking lot looked like a disaster zone. Someone had robbed the station while he was asleep, and somehow he hadn't heard a single thing. He expected his manager to fire him on the spot. Instead, his manager quietly said, "You have no idea how lucky you are." The thieves never touched him because he slept through the entire robbery. But after leaving that station, they drove a few miles down the highway and robbed another gas station. This time, the clerk was awake. He tried to stop them. They stabbed him to death and left his body behind the counter before disappearing into the night. The customer looked me straight in the eyes. His voice became calm, almost emotionless, as he said, "If you're ever so tired that you can't keep your eyes open, lock the doors and sleep. Because one day, that nap might be the only reason you're still alive." He picked up his cigarettes, thanked me with a small nod, and walked out. I never saw him the same way again.
I don't work at that gas station anymore, but even today, I still think about the employee who stayed awake and the man who survived only because he accidentally fell asleep. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if their roles had been reversed. And every single time that thought crosses my mind, it sends a chill down my spine. When I was in 8th grade,
One day, all of us kids were playing on the playground. Around that time, a strange, short new teacher named Mrs. Todd joined our school. At first, I was scared of her, but slowly we became somewhat close. She always treated me very well. Whenever there was a fun activity in class, she would call on me first. Anytime I did something well, she praised me a lot and was always very positive toward me. At that age, I felt like she was probably my favorite person in the world. I even remember telling my mom how much I liked Mrs. Todd. One day, I sat down at my desk and opened it to put my things away. As soon as I pulled out the drawer, I was shocked. Inside was a Victoria's Secret magazine.
The boy sitting next to me noticed the surprised look on my face and asked how it could have gotten there. While we were talking about it, Mrs. Todd walked over and said, "Where did this magazine come from? Where did you get it?" I was completely confused. I didn't understand anything that was happening. I told her that when I arrived that morning, the Victoria's Secret magazine was already inside my desk. But instead of believing me, she looked straight at me and said that the boy sitting next to me must have put the magazine in my desk. She kept repeating the same thing to both of us. Eventually, after hearing it over and over again, I accepted that maybe he really had put it there. A few days later, after class was over, she asked me to stay behind. She told me that if I kept doing well in school, I would get the chance to go on a special field trip. She said that only she and I would be going together, and we would spend the entire weekend at the Gulf of Mexico. At the time, I was very excited to hear that. I also wondered why only I was being given the opportunity and not the other students, but I forgot about it and focused on my studies.
The exams ended, and when my results came out, I had finished at the top of the class. Mrs. Todd was incredibly happy about it, as if she had been the one who came in first instead of me. That day, she told me that we would be leaving for the trip the day after tomorrow. I was extremely excited. But then something happened that I had never imagined. The next day when I went to school, the entire school was silent. I couldn't understand what had happened. When I went up to the stage, Mrs. Todd had died. Someone had killed her inside the classroom. Some of the teachers were saying that a spirit had done it, that it was the one that had taken Mrs. Todd's life. At that moment, I was devastated. I couldn't understand anything. I was completely heartbroken. Many years later, I realized how disturbing and inappropriate the entire situation had been. Even today, whenever I think about it, it scares me.